I think it's important when you have that calling to really nurture it, trust it, and tune in and listen to what it has to say. You need to see the experimentation phase as a needed and crucial process of becoming an artist. What if I told you that you don't need to think of anything? You need to allow the process to be intuitive and free-flowing. Important to change as many times as you need in this lifetime. For as long as I can remember, I have been called to the arts, deeply moved by vast landscape paintings, gut-wrenching emotional prose, engaged with polymer clay trinkets, and a world full of dreamy watercolor. Since I was a little girl, I have loved art. It has evoked some of my most deeply felt emotions, and I've always felt that push to be a creative myself. However, for 22 years, I struggled with having an art style, and finding my own unique place in the art world. I picked up so many mediums just to put them down again in a few weeks. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that, where you're not exactly good at something first, so you just kick it to the curb. Some months I was indulged in arts and crafts, other months I didn't think about it too much. The first several years of being a teenager, I struggled to be engaged with anything at all. Teenage years were rough. I think the longest I stuck with anything growing up was drawing Pokemon characters and making polymer clay trinkets. Those ventures lasted a couple years. I just kind of flowed with the wind. I deeply craved an art style, but it wasn't something I knew how to grasp. I was so deeply moved by art, but I didn't know how to create that same emotion and work for myself. I'll admit, I was often defeated when something didn't come easy and natural to me, or I wasn't good right away. Big mistake. My whole life I've been very independent, my way or the highway type of girl. Since I started working at 16, I despised working for someone else. Any light I had in me was blown out with the bad breath of someone else's control and schedule. Being exposed to the world of entrepreneurship, it ignited a spark within me. I deeply desired to create a life for myself. A life I love, my own foundation, my own rules, my own business. I didn't just desire it, I needed it. I knew I wouldn't be able to keep working for someone else without turning to bad habits eventually or becoming a bad person. I don't like who I am. I've become so moody and irritable and angry at the world. For the last 8 years of my life, I have put my best foot forward in the world of entrepreneurship and creativity. This film isn't gonna teach you how to be a full-time artist in terms of marketing yourself or how to build a website or any of that, but rather I'm going to share with you my mentality, my intentions, and the actions I took that led to creating my desired reality, a full-time artist. And I hope you can find the inspiration to continue your own journey. I didn't even know I wanted to be an artist at first. 13-year-old me would have definitely wanted that. But from 16 to 20, I was so deeply entranced by the world of photography and videography and even dabbling in writing my own poetry. I think, in a way, I had accepted my fate of not being an artist because I felt like I had no artistic talent, so I had moved on to other things. Around 18 years old, I had started my very own business. Actually, that's a lie, because around 11 years old, I had an underground jewelry business on Instagram. But that's a story we can get into at another time. I don't know if I can say that on the internet. Story for another time. So at 18, I'd started a business. I was hosting my own photography sessions for families and couples and seniors, and I was even filming weddings. That was what I really wanted to do at the time, was get into wedding videography. For about a year or two, I chased that. But somewhere along the way, it just was not in my heart. I realized I kind of hated posing people, and the wedding world was full of bridezillas. I loved photography, but I loved my own photography. I loved landscape photography and frolicking in nature with my camera. I liked making these kind of videos that I would learn years later. On a late night drive coming back home from the mountains and lots of thinking time, it just kind of dawned on me. I needed to give up the photography and videography business. It didn't light that spark in me that I needed, but I no longer wished to continue services, and I let it go. So here I am, 20 years old, and I am just wandering aimlessly. I had finished up my associate's degree at a community college, and I was going on to my junior year at a university. and I had already changed my major like 4 times into my first semester of junior year. I just felt like nothing called to me and everything would just suck my energy in the end. Like, I love helping people, but I can't work in a hospital. I hate blood. That would be way too much trauma and grief every day for me to take on. And I think law is super interesting, but having to hunch over a desk with documents all day, no matter like what I was looking into, it just wasn't worth it. I dropped out of college. I knew something else was meant for me, and I knew this even before my freshman year of college. I think I was just people pleasing my mother at that point. I've known for a very long time in the depths of my soul that I was meant to carve my own way. I was meant to build something for myself, and I had to go out in the world and find it. I think it's important when you have that calling to really nurture it, trust it, and tune in and listen to what it has to say. Even when it takes time, and even when you feel lost. Even when it seems silly and infeasible and impossible. Those niggling feelings and thoughts that don't leave your mind and are always there in the pit of your stomach and depths of your heart, those are there to guide the way. Those are the stepping stones. That is the checklist you need to be crossing off. At this time, I was 20 years old. I was traveling pretty spontaneously. I was no stranger to a cross-country road trip or booking a flight with no plans and a 48-hour notice. Or 24. Or 6. I was learning so much about myself through traveling, and I felt like each time I returned, I came back a new person with new wisdom and even more drive to create a beautiful life for myself. It had been about 6 years before I was seriously into any serious arts and craft hobby, except for like the occasional watercolor dabble. And of course, the photography, videography, and little poetry ventures. Winter of 2020, I had briefly picked up jewelry making, wire wrapping, somewhere out of the blue. That little arts and crafts spark had, and I was freshly dropped out of college. Perhaps that was room to hear my soul's calling. And I did feel like my heart's calling was getting louder and louder, and those tables were they beginning to turn. It was that winter when I finally had that feeling that I could do this for the rest of my life. I was wire wrapping a stone really early one morning on my bedroom floor, and doing that wire wrapping was something I was just looking forward to doing every single day, and I kept with that for a few months. But I didn't stick with it longer than a few months. I like to say I wasn't ready for it yet. I had a journey to go on first. My heart wasn't fully invested in the wire wrapping either, so I had dropped it, and I had told myself specifically, if it's meant to come back for me, it will. In those next 4 months, they were kind of rough. I was living on my own, working freelance gigs, wandering aimlessly, and just trying to scrape by. I was desiring nothing more than to leave my home state of Michigan. I think that was something that kind of halted my arts and craft journey too, growing up, was just my desire to leave and go out there and explore. If you have that desire to travel, like, let me be the one to tell you, do not ignore that. There is something out there for you to find. I so badly wanted to leave. It was all I could think about. It was all I could talk about. Like, my friends probably found me so fucking annoying. I left Michigan June of 2021. I was very impulsively applying to jobs across the country. I didn't have anywhere to stay out there, and these were like seasonal positions that I needed a van or a camper for, which I did not have. I had accepted a campground job in Oregon, and I had 2 weeks to uproot my life, renovate a van, and get out there. I did just so. I left the state of Michigan on a new creative venture, renowned venture. I wanted to write a book. And the first book I was writing, I'm not going to talk about because it needs to marinate inside of me. But I kind of dropped that idea and I picked up a new one, and it was going to be, I'm going to write a poetry book. I spent 1 whole year in Oregon, and about 6-7 months in, I self-published a poetry book. And once again, I found myself in a state of unfulfillment. I was losing the light working for someone else. My spirit just enters a very dark place under someone else's control and schedule when I'm not able to live my life intuitively and in a free flow. I had entered a very dark space out in Oregon. I knew I was was meant for something different. I knew deep in my soul, in my heart, every vein in my body, that there was my own pathway in this world, and I was going to find it. It was 2022 at this time. Spring was settling upon the high desert of Oregon, and I had felt that arts and crafts spark return. I was at a local rock shop when I came across handmade wire wrap jewelry, some beaded jewelry. I purchased a handful of different necklaces that day, and I took them back to my little van, and I was like taking them apart and redoing them. I started bursting with ideas after that. I wanted to make my own polymer clay charms, and I wanted to bead, and I wanted to make zines, and I wanted to write more poetry, even though I was in a block with that because I had just wrote so much poetry. I published a book, and I did all of that. I drove 3 hours to the nearest craft store, which was a Michael's, and I stocked up on some seed beads. I got myself polymer clay. I started playing arts and crafts again, and that spark inside of me just continued to grow the more I nurtured. I think it was going to continue regardless. The universe was telling me to listen. I started stumbling upon many right place, right time moments. I was finding myself at art markets. I was meeting traveling full-time artists on the road. That was something I didn't like consciously fully realize until I was 22 years old. During this time, I was deeply desiring community, and vending art fairs and festivals and getting into the art world seemed like the perfect way for me to do that. Get myself back out in the world and find my people. At 22 years old, June of 2022, I moved back home to Michigan. And you're probably thinking, girl, what? You were in Oregon. Sometimes the desert pushes you out to where you need to grow, so you can return the right way. Solid foundation type shit. So here I am, summer of 2022. I was feeling so incredibly lost and like I had made all the wrong choices. I was really sad that I left a place so special to me and so beautiful. I was wandering pretty aimlessly again for a little bit. It took a couple months for me to find my footing moving back home, but it came together because moving home, I had made a promise. Just like when I moved out to Oregon, I had made a promise. I am coming home to myself. And when I came home to myself, I made a new promise because I moved back home, and that was, I am committed to my creative growth. I spent most nights cooped up at my little art desk, and I worked a 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, but I started trying. And I started being willing to fail. And I made art just to make art. Anything that came to mind, I was like, okay, you're making it. And okay, you're learning. The idea came to my mind. It was coming into life by my hands. I made a lot of weird random things. A lot of random charm necklaces. I got into digital drawing. I was making like weird little trinket things. About 5 months into this little experimentation phase, I signed up and I vended my first 2 art markets. And my first market, I made $30. I sold 1 thing. But my second market, I made a good chunk of change and sold out of a good chunk of inventory I had. That was all the validation I needed to move forward. But not only that, I started validating myself. This is a whole nother story as well, but I've had to learn how to be kind to myself in recent years and how to validate myself and know my self-worth needs to be all the way up here. I made a lot of weird and honestly kind of bad jewelry in the beginning. My jewelry in the beginning is nothing. Absolutely nothing like what I'm creating now. I started making jewelry by making like weird, whimsy, fairy-like, woodsy, what I called fairy garden pendant. And now I'm a landscape artist and fine jeweler. But this part is important because it was the start. And it was all that experimentation that brought me to what I was supposed to be doing and where I'm supposed to be. Experimentation is so crucial to the creative process. Even if nothing seemingly comes out of it, it still helps your creative mind grow and expand. You need to see the experimentation phase as a needed and crucial process of becoming an artist. It is the initiation phase, but it is meant to be fun. It's meant to make you wise. It is the phase that'll bring out your true, unique, authentic style. That's what we all want, right? Is our own style. I know a lot of us are scared of failing. I sure am. And that's something you have to grow out of. You need to see failure as your best friend because failure makes you wise. How can you truly know the ins and outs of something unless you fail? See failure as a tool, and I promise you it's going to take you so far. You're going to quantum leap. I was finding curiosity in so many mediums at this point. I was making trinkets out of polymer clay, and I was kind of dabbling in embroidery, and I was painting. I was making just so many things. Beading, I was digital drawing. I continued chasing all the avenues that sparked my heart. If an idea came to mind, I got my trusty notebook and I put it down to pursue. And while I was having original ideas, I was still lacking a style. I created a lot of bad art until I got to the good stuff. It was winter of 2022 when my style really started to come to light. I had made these little polymer clay like slab little pendant things. I was really trying my best to paint tiny little landscapes on them, but they weren't coming to fruition how I was picturing it in my head until a couple months later. I had an idea. Instead of trying to paint with paint on your little slabs, what if you try making your mountains out of clay? And I was like, what if I try using clay like it's paint? Because sometimes when clay is really conditioned, it just gets really soft. And it was reminding me of paint. My first ever clay landscape though, I actually took tiny little balls of clay and I just smushed them all together until it looked like a teeny tiny little mountain. I did a lot of these little ones. A lot of them failed, but the ones that did come together were so validating to me. I was creating something uniquely my own. I nurtured this idea once a week, sometimes more, and slowly but surely a brand was born. Not in jewels. I was still working for someone else at this time. I turned 23, and during March of 2023, I began what was the busiest 5 months of my life, vending art markets every single weekend on top of working full-time and running this whole business. I learned a lot during this time, having vended a variety of different art markets and what I needed to do to obtain my desired success. There were some art markets where I only sold one thing, but just being in that right environment, around the right people, making that one sale was so validating. It made the experience so worthwhile, and sometimes just selling that one thing was all the fulfillment I needed. Just that one person who loves your art can make your whole day. You have to look for the light in many different places when you are on the path of trusting yourself. Sometimes it's mysterious. My art had stagnated itself mid-summer of 2023. It was after a few months of markets, and I was ignoring the universe's call to take a step back and get my ass in the studio. I had celebrated my business's first birthday. I was finding some success at markets, but not what I knew that I was capable of. My booth needed a redo. My display needed to be taken up a notch, several notches. I wasn't nurturing the art that needed to be nurtured. I was in a bit of survivalist mode. I was just so desperate to not work for someone else anymore. I was nearing my wit's end. I was extremely burnt out. But I thought if I just kept pushing with my markets, I'd eventually make my break. Not true yet. I was very, very humbled during this time as well. Having faced my tent blowing away, some of my jewelry breaking, because when you start out as a jeweler, as an artist, as an anyone, you're an idiot and you're going to make mistakes. And that's okay. Let it humble you and let it make you smarter. I had actually faced a couple injuries too. I don't know if anyone else experiences this, but if I'm not slowing down and listening to the universe to slow down, I'll either get sick or I'll injure myself. But overall, I was just facing a season of loss. Literal and mental. But instead of looking at this as the universe doesn't want me on this path, I was looking at it like the universe is testing me to see if I'm capable. Instead of letting my mistakes get the best of me, I decided to learn and grow from them. Finally, fall rolled around. I had vended all the markets I had made a commitment to, and I quit markets for the next 8 months. I dedicated every ounce of free time to being in my studio, aka my living room. I was very blessed to begin working remotely at this time too, and I was driving a far distance to work, so I had even more time to experiment. I also live very far away from all my friends and family. I live in a very small rural town. To get to a considerable size city, you're gonna have to drive like an hour. Well, like, okay, there are some good size stores, like 30 minutes down the road. But the point is, during this time, I had doubled down on my commitment to creative growth. I really did not want to enter the new year of 2024 working for someone else. I did for a few months, but we're getting to the good part, okay? My business had blossomed into something of my own, something beautifully my own, shortly after the new year began. I had my own niche of like mini mountain sculptures, my tiny intricate wearable landscape, as well as a knack for beading, creating simple but also like funky, colorful necklaces. This was a very special time for me as I was realizing everything I'm capable of and that I am capable of something so beautifully unique. I knew at this point I was way too far in to give up. I had invested so much time and energy. I uncovered something uniquely my own. It felt like my own. It felt like it was meant for me. My jewelry felt like a representation of my soul, and that was everything I wanted and everything I was seeking. To uncover something uniquely your own, again, I'm going to touch on the process of experimentation, the dedication to playing. Let your inner child run free. I know she or he is screaming at you. Showing up to your desired mediums daily, not being afraid of failure. I would have never uncovered my own niche if I didn't entertain the silly idea of what if I treat clay like it's paint. And I would have never uncovered my own niche if I would have given up after the first failed attempt of a mountain necklace. Winter was starting to go away in Michigan, and it was getting warmer and spring was rolling around, and I knew it was becoming time to quit my job. This was a huge leap of faith for me because my website has never made more than a couple $100 a month. Some months it made nothing, and I didn't know how markets would pan out for the summer. And honestly, it was risky with the profits I made from the previous year. I quit my job 4 months into 2024. I was 24 years old. I was 3 months away from celebrating my business's second birthday. I had over $1,000 in credit card debt. I had zero savings. I have a mortgage and a big chunk of bills to pay every single month, but I was completely burnt out and I was at my wit's end. I was having too many conversations with the universe to go back on my word and my promises and intent with myself for the year. I knew I was ready to take the leap. I needed it, my art needed it, and all the ways I was lacking and all the ways I feel like life was taking from me, it was all leading back to that job I was working. The next weekend, after quitting my full-time job, I vended my first art market for that year. I was really tried and tested this month. I experienced the consequences of not doing enough planning and research on my markets and being too hasty. Here's another important part of being a full-time artist. Don't rush it. Take your time. Take your time with the details. What's meant for you won't miss you. You don't have to be in lack mentality all the time. But the second month, I was blown away and graciously rewarded. I was making it. In fact, I was more than making it. I made more money working for myself than I would have working my full-time job that month. Taking that leap of faith also gifted me the deepening of my art style, sharpening of my work, and even the start of something else uniquely my own. Something I was even more excited about, making silver rings out of art clay silver and uncovering a new future for myself. That summer, I had started my own unique silver ring line, my Married to the Mountains collection. If I didn't quit my job, I don't think I would have seen such significant leaps in my business and my practice. I had opened myself up to the possibility of becoming a fine jeweler, dedicating more time and money towards silver clay. I continued work on my other tiny landscape jewelry. I came out with new products, my miniature wearable mountain pendants expanded to rings and bracelets, and I even started ditching the work that didn't resonate with me anymore, like my fairy garden pendants. I went through a pretty big rebrand. I changed my business name way more than once throughout this whole process. I had to honestly ask myself what was and wasn't working. I realized where my heart was and where it wasn't. When I tried to push through something my heart wasn't fully in, like those fairy garden pendants that I really didn't enjoy making, it surely didn't go anywhere. Like, I hardly sold any. My heart was in the mountains, my heart was in the silver clay, it was in the ring making, it was in the drawing and the poetry. I nurtured what was making my heart happy every single day. When I moved back from Oregon the summer of 2022 to the summer of 2024, I showed up for myself creatively daily. Even when it was hard, even when I was tired, even when I was burnt out, even when I felt like I was going nowhere. I played with the clay, I chased the curiosity, and I bravely looked at myself and honestly but kindly judged myself to see where I needed to go and grow. I wasn't afraid to change and show up differently. I think it's important to change as many times as you need in this lifetime. I think change is just important in general because staying the same just gets boring and stagnant. I was willing to learn and I was willing to show up even when I didn't know how to. I was willing to just start. My art style was born out of the intention of creating every single day. It just happened as I entertained the curiosities and my heart's whisperings. It came together as it was meant to. An art style develops as you develop your own skill and techniques. We all have our own unique way of using a medium and our tools, and that develops into your art style. An art style is a result of hundreds of hours of curiosity following. I know so many people who struggle creating, and I was one of these people, because they can copy something from reference, but they feel like they can't think of something on their own. What if I told you that you don't need to think of anything? You need to allow the process to be intuitive and free-flowing. What if you just need to throw some colors down and go from there? There's a lot of unknown and trusting in the art world, and I think that's what can make the process and the result so special. My business was born because every day I kept putting the building blocks together. Whether it was laying the foundation of a website or inventory or a new product, or just picking up a little bit of paint or watching a YouTube tutorial and learning, I showed up as often as I could and I gave it my all. And my all looked different every single day. Many days I grinded in the studio as much as I could, and other days all I could do was muster up a couple little silly TikToks to get myself out there, or like small website tasks. Some days I really needed to take a step back, give my mind a rest, allow the ideas to marinate, and just clean and organize my apartment. Get that energy moving and clear. Some days my brain just needed to be a brain and just be, and that creative mind needed a vacation. Being a full-time artist is the willingness to learn, to get better, to look squarely at your art and your practices, and ask yourself what steps you can take to get better. It is an upwards journey where you are constantly being asked to grow, but that view is always getting so much better. Okay, like I'm here and I'm so proud, but how am I moving forward even brighter and prouder? And as much as some of us hate the marketing game, it is an art of its own, and your way is there. I am choosing that it is a game that can be won as long as I commit myself to the process and the growth of it all. Finally, throughout this whole process, you have to be deeply committed to loving yourself and your work. You cannot hate yourself into making good art. It's crucial to take days easy, to comfort yourself with cookies and a nap after a bad art market, a bad art day. Be proud of your art. Bask as much as you can in those feel-good feelings when you make something you're proud of. Don't be afraid to show it off and celebrate yourself. Throw yourself a damn party, okay? Have a dance party in that living room. Get yourself some sparkling juice or wine and your favorite dessert and some pizza. You deserve it. Throw a party for your first market, a collection you're proud of. Any collection you drop, your first website sale, your 50th website sale, your business's birthday. And I'm not going to lie either, it's going to be really freaking hard. I made almost no money my first year in business. My tent blew away. I was humbled after humbled after humbled. I questioned giving up a lot, but that calling in my heart was always way too loud to ignore, and to continue going about life, doing things the way I was doing them. The big point that I'm trying to make here is that a full-time artist is born out of the intention of being one. How to be a full-time artist is showing up as one daily. Showing up for yourself daily. Allowing the space for something uniquely your own to be born. Done through curiosity, experimentation, and not rushing the process. Always finding ways to continue moving forward and taking baby steps up the mountain. And committing yourself to growing and getting better. It can be hard to reflect on your Instagram marketing game from 6 months ago and realize where you could have done better, or looking back on old art. It's okay. How can it be improved? How can you grow from this? What is it teaching you? Get comfortable with that experimentation. Get comfortable with failure. Failure is a valuable resource. Learn those ins and outs and gain that high degree of wisdom. Get yourself a notebook and brainstorm daily. Keep yourself accountable with a creative log. Write down every single idea you have and doodle it out. Make an intention to create just one thing a day. I truly feel like my notebooks at times were the backbone to my success as an artist. The key to being a full-time artist is the willingness to keep moving, to always keep asking what is working and what is not, to keep experimenting, to keep being curious and trying new things. Grasp onto what works and sweetly release what doesn't. Know that you are capable of greatness and something uniquely your own. We all deserve our own space to thrive in this world. Anything someone else can do, you can do too. The abundance that other people have, you can have too. Trust, experiment, grow, love. Trust in the process, yourself, your art, and the universe. Experiment ruthlessly. Try again and again and again. Explore all those different avenues. Don't keep yourself in any sort of shell or box. Be committed to growth and love endlessly. Share that love far and wide. Remember, collaboration, not competition. And you really need to stick to that, not just preach it. Every step you take from the moment of your first ever creative spark is a part of your blueprint of your career as a full-time artist and the creation of your art style. I love you. Take care. Hello, if you're still here. I can't believe you're still here listening to me yap. I just wanted to take a moment and prove to you guys that being an artist is not just a talent, it's a learned skill. Practicing every day and following your curiosity will get you somewhere. It is something you practice daily. It is something you or anyone can be good at. Just practice and follow that curiosity. I used to be that person that would say, I can't even draw a stick person. And I would say I had no artistic talent or skill and blah, 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 blah. But that was obviously a lie, because look at me now. And I hear so many other people say, like, they have no skill and they have no talent. But what if you do and it's just waiting to be uncovered? When I was talking about that little mushroom necklace, those little mushroom necklaces I was making. This is what my stuff was starting out as. Just cute little charms. I wasn't doing any painting yet. Just cute little charms, guys. Like, this is what my beading was starting out as. It's just so simple and cute. Like, when I was 20, when I was talking that I was 20 and getting into wire wrapping, this is what I was doing, guys. I was selling things like this. These were my fairy garden pendants. So whimsy, so woodsy, and nobody wanted them. This was one of my first ever original ideas. I call them my moon babies, and you can see how it started out. And just look where it went. Look how sharp and crisp and just beautiful she is. Oh, I love you. Dude, this was one of my first ever landscape paintings. It was of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Point I'm trying to make is you are not born an artist, you become an artist. And you can become an artist just by practicing. Talent can be yours to hold too. You too are capable of greatness. I think that's it. I love you guys. You are capable of so many great things. Just trust yourself.